Hello. Russia has become the first country in history to be subjected to an unbelievably high number of economic sanctions. Up to 11,000 sanctions that the US and Europe have imposed on Russia. So with those terrible sanctions, after nearly a year has passed, how is Russia's economy now? Let's find out for today's video. The same sanctions against Russia have been removed from the system by the US and Western countries' global payment. Do not have access to necessary device software, tools such as hedging derivatives of bonds issued in foreign currencies and EPO have almost disappeared. According to the Russian Finance Ministry, the country's financial sector has directly lost hundreds of billions of dollars due to Western sanctions, which includes damage to the stock market, capital of banks. And especially, there are $300 billion of foreign exchange reserves that Russia deposited in foreign banks that have been frozen inaccessible. Following the scope of Western sanctions, it also plays a strong role in technology field. Specifically, the US is in hand and the trump card as most of the advanced semiconductors used for electronics and military equipment are manufactured by American companies. Since the beginning of the conflict, Washington has imposed export restrictions on this item. That makes a lot of sense. Russian rockets, for example, need semiconductors to work. But this one, Russia can't produce on its own. Overall, the number of microchips Russian imports have fallen by up to 90%. And one of the hardest hit sectors is the auto industry. Russian automakers can't produce many cars because of a lack of Western parts. They have to import 70% of their new cars from China. Besides, they also double the amount of used cars they buy from Japan. 23,117 units in August alone. Car companies are also losing money and are gradually withdrawing from Russia. Japanese carmaker Nissan reported a loss of $687 million when it transferred its Russian business to a local state-owned company for just €1. Toyota has also ended car production in Russia. Now the life of Russian people is a little more difficult. When the inflation rate in Russia in August rose to 14.3%. That is, if previously spending $10 million a month is enough. Then in August it will be necessary to spend the amount of $11,430,000. But the leaders of Russia have managed to curb inflation. By raising interest rates like that, inflation has dropped a bit so far at 12.9%. Going into specifics, we see that Russia's economy has encountered many problems, serious problem. And it can be even more serious in the future, and this is not difficult to understand when Russia is facing the biggest superpower on the planet. And at the same time, fight with the largest economic and military alliance in the world. So Russia can't help but suffer, but there's an interesting thing that is. If you look at it more generally, it turns out that Russia's economy is brighter much more than economists forecast. The forecast is given at a time when new sanctions are specifically imposed. According to the forecast of Russia's GDP in 2022, will drop at least 7 to 8%. There are even those who forecast a drop of 12 to 15%. Investments are expected to fall 25 to 28%, commercial and retail sales 8 to 9%, while inflation will increase 20 to 25%. And 2022 is almost over. Whether the above predictions are correct or not, it turns out that the answer is not quite right. Russia's economy is a lot tougher than people think. Specifically, according to the Russian Economic Development Ministry, in September the country's GDP down 5% from the same period last year. August is 4%, July is 4.3%. On average, the third quarter was down 4.4%, the second quarter was 4.1% and the first quarter was up 3.5%. Although there are no official figures for 2022, we can see a decrease, the deepest is 5%. Therefore, it is impossible for the GDP of the whole year to decrease by 7%, even less by 15%. And the latest projections show that Russia's GDP will fall by only 2.9 to 3.4%, confronting a major coalition. If Russia only reduced it like that, that is a very good thing for Russia and the main reason for Russia to keep such stability. Attributed to an increase in the price of oil and gas, although Russian gas sales decreased due to the loss of customers from Europe. But in return, Russia sells more to China and India, thanks to high oil and gas prices. So the revenue is also 3 times higher than the average of previous winters. Specifically, Russia has earned $160 billion from selling oil and gas, while the whole year 2021 is only $125 billion. And the additional amount of $35 billion helped compensate for economic sectors that suffered losses outside. Besides, the prediction is new and almost correct. As only the last month's data is missing, the results suggest that inflation will level off at around 12%. Investment will decrease by only about 1% and people's real income will decrease by 2 to 2.5%. Only the estimated decline in retail trade is closest to being 6%, down from previously forecasted 8 to 9%. Thus, the Russian economy did not collapse nor decline as deeply as initially calculated when the sanctions were imposed. Russia's GDP only lost about 3%. But let Russia suffer such damage. The economies of Europe and the US also suffered a lot. Not to mention the economy of Ukraine was almost wiped out, more than 30% in general. This war happened to both sides. Only China is the beneficiary. They can sell many essential goods, buy a lot of cheap Russian fuel and sell it back to Europe at a high price. And if more generally, the people of Ukraine, Russia and Europe are both suffering the consequences of the economic recession caused by the war. So I'm still against war. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support IFACTS. See you in the next videos.